back to another episode of the Chronicles podcast, a podcast where I discuss all things disability and mental health, along with my own personal journey in becoming accepting of my complex mental illness and visible and invisible disabilities. This episode is going to be the third video in my little abuse and toxic relationship series. No, that I have been doing over the past few weeks. I am thinking about doing some disability related content next, kind of some other lightness, thinking about videos from TikTok, Reddit, some Am I the A-hole? I really feel like the things that I have highlighted in the last few episodes are really good conversations. But yeah, I'm just wanting to mix up some heavier content, lighter content, get my ideas together, be consistent. But yeah, if you have anything that you would like me to talk about, you would like to hear me talk about, if there is some content that you would love for me to react to, please drop me an email or a message on social media. I do record content in advance at the moment, so it may be a few weeks before I get around to recording any of your ideas, but I would love to hear from you if you have any. Enough of yapping about that. In the past two episodes, I have covered the warning signs to look for when starting a new relationship with behaviours that abusers can show, and also for just some education on how abuse can impact people in the initial period, being together just after leaving, and then for years afterwards. These past two episodes have a lot of educational information around these topics, as well as some statistics and case studies of how abuse has impacted people. If you think these episodes could interest you and you've not listened to them yet, these will be linked down below in the description box. But these episodes were also pretty heavy and contain topics that may be highly triggering to people. Those episodes aren't required to follow this episode, as I know it can be difficult to listen to sometimes, but I would say to try and check them out, and if they're not for you, that's okay. But today I wanted to think of the impact on relationships in terms of family or friends being cut off, to be more dependent on an abuser, but also how does abuse or toxic relationships impact people when they are then trying to start new romantic relationships after being mistreated. I also wanted to think about things such as how to keep yourself safe when you are in the midst of a heavily toxic relationship, but also how to stay safe after leaving, as this can be an extremely difficult time. I also wanted to think about what healing and recovery can be like after leaving an abusive relationship, and what it can feel like for those who have to basically start over again. This is when someone has been torn down to a point where they really need to rebuild. If you think of any of these topics might be triggering, like I've said in the previous episodes, that is totally okay. Out throughout these series, like these episodes, this little series, I've been saying it's better to look after yourself and come back when things feel less heavy and more manageable. But the most important thing is to take care of yourself. I will also have some resources at the end of this video, the same as I've done with the past few episodes in the series, and there will be some further support in the description. So get comfy, grab a snack, hydrate yourself, and we will get into this week's episode of the podcast. Remember, if you like this video, subscribe, leave a like, share it with your pals. Anything that you would like to contact me about, my social media and my email will be listed down in the description box. So I wanted to think about the impact on relationships. In the past few episodes, I have spoke about the impact on mental health and physical health, and there were some slight mentions of the impact on interpersonal relationships, but I wanted to save it for this episode as those two before were getting pretty lengthy with my research and everything that I felt was important to highlight. I want to think about the impact on close relationships, like with family members or people you've been friends with for years. I'm not wanting to think about the impact on your relationships right now. I'm going to loop right back to that at the end of this episode. Rebuilding relationships after being subjected to abuse can present quite a few difficult challenges. When thinking of with like a more overall kind of view of the problems that can crop up are isolation during abuse. This is the main reason I wanted to touch on the impact on family and friends relationships, as when in a romantic relationship that is abusive at its core, one of the main goals is to cut the victim off from their support network, as it then makes it easier for the abuser to gain control, and they require their victim to be dependent on them to feel like there is some safety, that the victim will feel trapped and not leave. Due to the abuser's techniques to gain control, trying to reconnect with family and friends may be hard due to having a lack of trust, some fear that they are going to be treated in the same kind of way by their loved ones that they were in their toxic abusive relationships. And it can make it really hard for survivors to re-establish these relationships. One of the problems that can be present is communication barriers. Discussing the abuse is often painful, and survivors might fear judgment or misunderstanding from family and friends. And sometimes it is really hard to hear that someone you care about is being subjected to abuse. There is guilt and shame that can be unintentionally made worse, and the kind of thing that is coming to my head is like a parent saying, "But you've always been so strong, I'd never think you would be abused or mistreated." And I know at times it was all I had known, and there was a big confusion between love and abuse. I wanted to be loved and understood, and it's so confusing to realise that that want of vulnerability had been used against me. It is so hard to not internalize the treatment as being your fault. I think with this kind of reflection, I'm going to look back to this more when I go on to like thinking about what to do to stay safe, and just think about if like you're a close family member or a friend of someone who has come to you and told you about in a situation that they've experienced, kind of what the do's and don'ts might be in that situation. But before that, there is another example that I have that might be unhelpful, is that one that I threw up there just kind of ended up mashed into everything else. Like, I'm sitting recording this just now and I'm thinking, should I just try that all again? Because I really don't know if it makes sense, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Another example of something that can be said if you're a family friend or a family member or a friend, it can be unhelpful to ask questions such as, "Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you leave sooner?" These questions can end up feeling really invalidating and quite dismissive, even if they come from a place of concern. I think what you need to remember is the person is coming to you now and they're telling you the things that they've experienced. Listen to them. Like, don't question why didn't you leave, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that. They were being abused, that's why. I wanted to think about what challenges that can be present when people are trying to navigate reconnecting with their family. Like I mentioned in the first example that I had given, survivors may experience feelings of shame and guilt about losing contact, or feel guilty for not reaching out sooner even though the isolation was not their fault. There can be a misunderstanding of the abuse. Family members might not fully understand what the survivor's experience was or why they cut ties, especially if they weren't aware of the abuse that was going on. There can be resentment or hurt feelings. Family members might feel hurt or abandoned during being isolated, which then creates an emotional barrier to reconnecting. And there is also a fear of judgment. Survivors might then worry that the family members will judge them for staying in the abusive relationship or for the decisions that were made during the time, like I'd kind of said, questioning why didn't you leave, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that. The answer to those questions are always going to be because they were getting abused. I was then also like, so thinking about barriers, but then how do you navigate the process of trying to recreate, trying to reconnect? I think it is a gradual process, taking small steps to rebuild trust and communication, like sending a message or arranging to meet up for a coffee or something that's not heavy or anything like that. It is very important to try and set boundaries. I think survivors should try and define topics or behaviours that are acceptable during interactions, and this kind of helps to protect their emotional well-being and to ensure that they aren't treated the same way that they have been in their previous relationship. Open conversations explain the isolation and the abuse to family members if comfortable, because that then helps them to understand their situation and avoid assigning blame onto you. I thought when reconnecting with friends, it can be different to kind of reconnecting with family relationships, because I think there very much is an idea that your family are always going to be there, you're always going to be connected. Your family are the people that are meant to love you undoubtedly, even if you've fucked up or you've done something, it's unconditional. Whereas with your friends it's not quite like that. So like things where like your friends could have gone through things whilst you've been isolated, and it's hard to kind of catch up on that because they feel like they've been abandoned or whatever. So I thought that it was very good to kind of think about this, because there's definitely been times where I've lost contact with people and then I've just left it because I felt too scared to kind of dip the toe in there and be like, I'm really sorry, I was told that I wasn't allowed to speak to you, because it makes you feel a bit silly of like, well, yeah, I did cut you off because somebody else told me to because I thought they loved me. Like, I'm like, I need to get my brows done. That little bit of eyebrow sticking up there is doing my head in. But anyway, back to rebuilding friendships. The barriers to rebuilding friendships there may be feelings of alienations. Uh, Feelings of alienation. Survivors might feel like what they have experienced, they no longer fit in with their old friend group due to like the changes in their life, the trauma they've experienced. They might be fearing rejection. Like friends that intervened during the abuse may feel frustrated or distant that their efforts were ignored because at that point you still had the rose coloured glasses on. There is like an emotional distance. I think survivors tend to struggle with kind of vulnerability, fearing that friends won't understand the trauma or they won't really want to address it. They just want to kind of move on from it. There is then also a potential in like making new friends, so not even just, oh, little golden hour got sun on my face, porcelain girl. Um, Stop getting distracted, Becca. Come on. Um, there isn't just challenges in reconnecting with friends, but also thinking about creating new friendships. There may be hypervigilance. Survivors can be overly cautious when forming new friendship, questioning others' intentions, or fearing that there is a betrayal coming. There can be a decline in social skills as there is time spent in isolation or with an abuser. It can really break down somebody's confidence in social interactions, making it really hard to engage in casual conversations and get to a point where you're able to develop trust with a new friend. There is the trauma impact. There are emotional triggers that can arise unexpectedly during new friendships, especially if some of the topics kind of touch on themes of abuse or control. They might bring up something that's happened in their life and that triggers you to your abuse, and it's a bit raw, and it's one of those things where I think if I was just meeting somebody and I had like a very raw and vulnerable experience, I would then feel like, oh shit, no, don't like that. Like, you've just seen a bit of me that was a bit too vulnerable, and we don't know each other like that. And are you going to use that against me at some point? And those are all the things that just fly about. But I thought of some kind of tips for survivors when trying to rebuild friendships or trying to connect with new people, which is having a mutual understanding. Choose friends that demonstrate empathy and patience for you when you're trying to navigate your healing journey. Um, Also join in supportive communities, participating in support groups or activities, or even like going to a crafts group, an art group, a swimming group, an exercise group, going out for a walk with your pals. Like, there are so many different things you can do to get engaged in community and meet new people where it doesn't feel like it's like a big commitment. Just start slowly, start by low pressure interactions, or like going to a little party or meeting for a coffee. All of these things are easily doable. I decided to also put in a little bit of statistics here, and thinking about social isolation during abuse, research shows that 53% of DV survivors report losing friendships due to their abuser's control. Friendship outcomes post abuse: about 35% of survivors report difficulty in maintaining relationships due to the trauma related behaviours like withdrawal or emotional detachment. Survivors who engage in therapy or join support groups are 60% more likely to successfully rebuild relationships. So, even if it's something where you find a group because you really like that hobby, just try it. See if you like it, see if you meet anybody, because you don't know unless you try it. And like I'd said earlier on, I was going to look back to thinking about the kind of do's and don'ts with family members when a family member has had a period of isolation and they come back to you because they have been experiencing abuse. Um, First and foremost, listen without judgment. In my head, it's just the TikTok, we listen and we don't judge. That is your job. It is one of the most powerful things that you can do, is simply let your loved one share their story at their own pace. Don't interrupt, don't try and offer solutions right away. Just let them know that their feelings are valid. This sounds like, you can say things like, this sounds incredibly difficult, I'm here to listen, I'm here when you want to share more. That kind of reassurance goes a really long way in helping a survivor to feel safe. It is also essential to respect their boundaries. Survivors might not be able or ready to talk about everything right away or even at all. There is a lot of energy that needs to be spent processing the impacts of abuse before people can even outwardly speak about them, and you shouldn't rush somebody to do that. Let them decide how much they want to share, and if they're open to it, gently encouraging professional help like therapy or support groups. This can be a great way to help them heal, but remember, it is their choice. Do not push them if that is not something that they're ready for yet, because it can then create a feeling like they can't go to you for support. I think another big thing is to celebrate the small victories, whether it is them reaching out to you, making it through a tough day, or even just the laughing again for the first time in a while. Acknowledge these moments. They are rebuilding their life step by step, and every single step matters. I'm I'm really struggling with my transitions today. What, like, we're trying to then think about the things not to do when supporting a survivor. Don't blame or criticise them. Like I had said earlier, questions like, why didn't you leave sooner? You should have told us what was happening. These can add shame and guilt to survivors that they're already feeling. They don't need any more of it. Do not rush their healing process. It is natural for you to want them to move on or to get back to normal, but healing from abuse isn't a linear journey, and a person that has been abused cannot go back to who they were before the abuse. Survivors need time to process their trauma, and pressuring them to speed up can do a lot more harm than good. Also, it is best not to try and pry for details about what happened. Survivors may not want to be or not be ready to relive those experiences. It is an extremely complex thing when talking about abuse. Sometimes you can feel those feelings in your stomach and in your body and all of the things that were there when the abuse is happening, and sometimes that is just too much for people, and there is a need to respect their privacy and let them share when they are comfortable and when they're ready. And I think one of the maybe more important things is, don't take their behaviour personally. If your loved one seems distant, guarded, or mistrustful, it's not about you, it's a reflection of the trauma they've experienced. Please be patient and just give them the space to rebuild that trust and open up to you. I think the in my mind, the best thing that you can do in any situation for any of your people is to just show up consistently, check in with them, invite them for a coffee, for a walk, be present. See, even if it's the fourth Monday in a row and you've asked them the last 3 weeks to go a walk and they've said no, ask them again. Like, there's no harm in it. That week they might say yes, they might decide to get out of the house, and that is something that is so important. Survivors often need to feel just a sense of normalcy again, and like, these small gestures can make such a huge difference. It isn't your role to fix them or have all of the answers. It is your role to create a safe and empathetic space where they feel supported and validated and understood. And a lot of those times with people, it's not about the things that you do or the things that you buy them or you're bringing them. It's the safety of being there and knowing that they can open up to you. That is the basis. If there is anyone listening to this who may be a survivor yourself, and you have listened to these episodes or this little series, or you're just even listening to this one, you're not alone. There are people who care about you and want to help you heal. If you're not ready to reach out to your family and friends yet, that's okay. Take your time. You're already sharing, you're already showing a lot of resilience, in my opinion, by even listening to the podcast episode today, to be honest. I want to move on to think about what kind of things survivors should do to stay safe when reconnecting with family and friends, when entering new relationships, and also thinking a little bit about post separation abuse, which I hadn't really looked into a lot before researching these episodes. However, I also kind of found a document from Sheffield Council that went over this, so I'm going to link that down below in the description if you guys want to give a read of that. But in this section, I want to focus on the incredible resilience that many women show leaving abusive relationships. It is important to acknowledge that IPV, intimate partner violence, affects people of all genders and sexual orientation, including those in same-sex relationships. While I will be discussing the experiences of women in this episode, the insights shared apply to kind of all survivors. Research highlights that women often use a range of strategies, both overt and subtle, to resist and cope with abuse, whether it is reaching out for external support, carefully planning their exit, or finding ways to maintain a sense of autonomy. These actions are powerful demonstrations of resilience. Leaving an abusive relationship is never just as simple as walking away. It takes immense courage and careful planning. Survivors must navigate a host of challenges, from threats to their physical safety to economic instability, legal battles, and the emotional weight of leaving somebody that they may still have some extremely complicated feelings for. Resilience the resilience required in this process is extraordinary, and I really do think that it deserves some recognition. It is crucial for professionals and support networks to recognise that leaving an abusive relationship does not always mean that the abuse stops. There is often a subconscious assumption that once a survivor escapes a relationship, they are free, but in reality, post separation abuse is a serious and ongoing issue. Post separation abuse refers to the ways an abuser continues exerting control even after the relationship is ended. This can manifest in various forms such as harassment, economic abuse, threats, manipulation through shared custody, online stalking, and more. The focus should never be on whether the relationship is over, it should be on the perpetrator's behaviour and their continued attempts to exert power. How post separation abuse unfolds really varies from case to case, but it can disrupt every aspect of a survivor's life: their employment, finances, relationships with children, and even their online presence. It is not uncommon for this type of abuse to last for years, making it essential for professionals to recognise it. Jesus Christ. Fucking postman. Making it essential for professionals to recognise it for what it is: a continuation of control. Dr. Jane Mockton Smith's 8 Stages of Homicide timeline underscores how dangerous this period can be. Separation is often a major trigger for perpetrators as it presents a loss of control. In fact, one study found that over 90% of survivors experienced post separation abuse, making them feel unsafe after leaving. The Femide Census 2020 further highlights the risk, revealing that 37% of women are killed by their current or former partner they had separated or were in the process of leaving when they were murdered. Recognising the severity of post-separation abuse, legal protections have evolved in the recent years. On the 5th of April 2023, controlling or coercive behaviour that continues after a relationship has ended has become a criminal offence within the UK. However, only incidents occurring after this date can be prosecuted under this law. For survivors seeking legal support, there are resources available to help navigate this process at low costs. Their Surviving Economic Abuse website offers detailed guidance, which I linked in the first episode when describing the economic abuse wheel. You will also find it in the description box of this episode. This information is taken from the Sheffield document that I mentioned at the top, which is aimed at healthcare professionals, empathising the importance of an informed and balanced approach when supporting survivors. The statistics really speak for themselves. Like I said, over 90% of survivors experience post-separation abuse, and 37% of those killed by a partner had already left or they were trying to leave. These numbers highlight the urgent need for awareness, vigilance, and action. Leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time for a survivor. While it is a courageous and necessary step to reclaiming autonomy, safety must be the top priority. Here are some key steps that survivors can take to protect themselves during the critical period. The first one is to develop a safety plan. A safety plan is a personalised strategy designed to keep survivors as safe as possible before, during, and after leaving an abusive situation. Some key elements to include in a safety plan are identifying a trusted person or organisation to reach out to, such as a domestic help hotline or local shelter, packing an emergency bag with essentials, ID documents, medication, cash, keys, clothes, and storing it in a secure location, establishing a signal or a code with a trusted friend or family member to discreetly communicate danger, planning safe exit routes and identifying secure places to go, such as a shelter or a friend's house. The second thing to do is document the abuse. Keeping a record of abusive incidents can be crucial if legal action becomes necessary. Survivors can save threatening messages, emails, or voicemails, take photos of damages to property or injuries caused by the perpetrator, keep a journal with specific dates and details of incidents, even if this is triggering or hard to do. It can be really important. Store evidence securely, such as in a password protected cloud storage system or within some kind of drive that is easily to give to somebody or hide in some place where your abusive partner will not find it or think about it. Number three can be to seek legal protections to stay safe. Survivors may be eligible for legal measures like restraining orders or non molestation orders. Working with organisations like Women's Aid or local domestic abuse charities can provide guidance on what your legal rights are and what available protections are. If there is immediate danger, contacting law enforcement is essential. However, I can acknowledge from personal experience and also from hearing other survivors' stories that the police's response to domestic abuse, stalking, and coercive control can be very inconsistent. While legal protections have improved, there is still a lot that could be done, in my opinion. Number four, try to protect your technology and online presence. Technology can both be a tool for safety and a means of control for abusers. Survivors should consider updating passwords for email, social media, and online banking, turning off location sharing on devices and apps, being cautious about what they post online as their abuser may be stalking them, using a new phone or email account if necessary if you are being bombarded by contact from your ex that you don't want contact with. Number five, and I think a very big thing for staying safe, is to lean on your support networks. Survivors should not have to go through this process alone. Seeking support from domestic abuse organisations, community groups, and trusted loved ones can make all of the difference. Like mentioned before in the resources and things like that, LGBTQ plus survivors may benefit from organisations like Gallup in the UK, which provides specialised support tailored to their experiences. The decision to leave an abusive relationship is one of the most courageous steps a survivor can take, but it is also one of the most dangerous. Understanding the risks, recognising post separation abuse, and ensuring strong safety measures can be life saving. More importantly, survivors deserve support, not just in escaping abuse, but in rebuilding a life free from fear and control. What are things that survivors can do to stay safe while building new relationships? Rebuilding trust and forming new connections after an abusive relationship can feel extremely overwhelming. There is a fear of being hurt again, the struggle to trust your own instincts, and the vulnerability that comes along with opening up is a lot. But healing is possible with time, patience, self compassion. Survivors can create very meaningful and healthy relationships. And here are some steps that I thought of to help to navigate this journey. Taking time to heal first. Healing isn't a race. There is no timeline for when you should be ready to open up to someone new, whether that be romantically or platonically. Prioritizing your self care, processing past experiences, and seeking therapy or counselling can be crucial steps in rebuilding an emotional strength before anything else, it is really important to feel grounded in yourself. Establish boundaries early. Boundaries are essential in any relationship, but after experiencing abuse, they can be even more crucial. Survivors deserve to feel safe, respected, and that means setting clear boundaries about what they're comfortable with. But finding that balance isn't always easy. I know firsthand how hard it can be. In the beginning, my boundaries were so rigid that people were just set up to fail. And other times, I let things slide because I just craved love and I didn't want to walk away too soon. I wanted to give them a chance and another chance and another chance and another chance till I went, oh, Becca. So now I'm learning to see people for who they are, not that just the potential that I want to believe in. And that brings me to the next point, something that I actually talked about in the last episode. Learning to recognise red flags. Education is power. Understanding the warning signs of control and abusive behaviour like excessive jealousy, isolation tactics, or unpredictable temper can help survivors to protect themselves. A healthy relationship is built on mutual trust, respect, and support. No one should have to guess whether they're safe in a relationship. If something feels off, it's worth paying attention to. Open up gradually. Vulnerability can be terrifying, but it is okay to take these things slow. Survivors should only share what they're comfortable with and on their own terms. The right people, whether friends or romantic partners, will respect the pace will respect that pace and offer patience instead of pressure. No one is entitled to your story before you're ready to share it. Rely on your support system. Reconnecting with friends and family can provide a much needed safety net. Talking things through with trusted loved ones can help offer perspective, especially when doubts creep in about new relationships. Having a strong support system helps to counteract isolation and reinforces that survivors really do not need to navigate this journey on their own. Kind of linked to what I said like a few points ago about if something feels right, trust that feeling, trust your intuition. This was one that took me a long time to learn. For so long I second guessed myself, blamed my gut feelings on IBS or anxiety or my period or any other excuse that I could come up with. But looking back, my instincts were screaming at me and I ignored them. Over the past year I have been testing what it's like to truly trust myself. There have been times where I've met someone who seemed great, but something just felt off. And the moment I have that feeling, I just get the ick so fast. Maybe I have shut down possibilities with good people because of it, but I can't afford to ignore myself anymore. After years of being told that I was too sensitive or overreacting, I'm finally realising that trusting my gut isn't overreaction, it's actually self protection. Healing after, like I have said a few times in this episode, healing after abuse is not linear. Some days will feel easier than others, and setbacks are part of the process. But the more we trust ourselves, set boundaries, and surround ourselves with safe and supportive people, the more we step into the kind of relationships that ultimately we truly deserve. This episode and the series covering forms of abuse and red flags are and all of the other information that I have packed into these episodes, you can probably tell that it is something that I'm passionate about and it's something that is close to my heart. It is something that I have looked into a lot outside of the podcast and trying to learn things that I have been blinded to in the past, and it seems like I'm too far in to say anything and back out. I think when you leave an abusive relationship, especially if it has went on for years, it can be extremely daunting to try and build your life back up, try to build back your support system, yourself, your confidence, your voice, reclaiming your body, and the things that you used to love doing that you've not been allowed to do for however long. It can be really terrifying admitting to people the things that you've been through and the darkest points that abuse took you to. It's getting into new relationships and questioning if their actions are genuine, waiting for the coin to drop, for something to happen, for them to switch up. I remember when I was seeing someone back in 2023, we had went into like Hamleys or Build-A-Bear or like a toy shop like that. And anybody who knows me knows that I love my teddies and I really get attached to them when I struggle to sleep without having one of my favourite teddies, and I feel mean getting rid of them, and after I watch them the texture doesn't feel right, so they end up just like going to my little graveyard on the couch. Hi, this is a little Becca editing interlude. The audio is about to get a bit funky for like the last 10-20 minutes because when I was recording this, I did not realise that my microphone stopped recording just before the end of the episode. I was going to do the end of the episode just as like a voiceover like this. However, I realised that I could like take the audio from the video. I've tried to edit it the best as possible, but it does sound different. So if that's what you're noticing, then sorry, it won't be like that in the next episode. Recording is dynamic sometimes, and sometimes I fuck up, but that's okay. I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode, and since I'm here, please remember to like and subscribe and support the channel if you like episodes like these and anything else I create. Okay, back to the episode. Sorry about the funky vocals. Bye for now. Anyway, this isn't about me and my obsession with teddies and how cute they are, but this story is to do with trying to build a new relationship, being in a toy shop and being really happy going around and touching and feeling all of the textures and like softness, but in him wanting to treat me and buy me a teddy, I had to leave the shop because I had an emotional flashback of one of my relationships that when I tried to break up with him, he got a bin bag and was throwing all of the teddies that he had bought me over the 2 years since of like saying since I was breaking up with him that he would take them back. And I was so upset back at that time, but I just wanted them to be gone. Yet here I was 6 or 7 years later, crying and hyperventilating in a shopping centre because I had been reminded of that abuse because a guy wanted to buy me a teddy. But with that new relationship, although it didn't work out, it was the first ever relationship where I didn't feel like I'd lost myself in the process. And there's something really conflicting about that, to know that I had come to terms with some really shitty, abusive relationships through someone loving me, yet I didn't feel like I was broken in the process. I have accepted that I have complex PTSD, and unfortunately, I am going to be reminded of the domestic abuse I witnessed and was subjected to as a child, which then grew into a lot of abusive relationships because I didn't know any better. I like to think that I'm getting somewhere, but it has taken me a really long time. And I know for people that can be extremely daunting. I don't know if I would have faced up to my demons without having my accident. I needed something to stop the cycle of self-destruction that I was in, and although I am heartbroken that I had to start again and again and again physically over the years, I had to start again in my brain too. In the beginning, I didn't want to at times. I just wished that I could be put into a coma, just get a break from it all. And out like I just wanted away from the thoughts that were going round in my brain. But the difference was that these thoughts came out more to the people that I trusted, I think, and starting again after experiencing a lot of different types of abuse in severe and less severe ways. But I don't feel like I'm in survival mode anymore. In my last episode, I shared a statistic that on average it takes 7 times to leave an abusive partner for good. If you're in that stage where you're in the loop of going back, I really hope you find the strength to get out soon. You deserve to live a life that is not abusive, and I hope some of the information that I've shared in this episode can maybe help. It can be daunting, especially when there are a lot of it can be daunting, especially where there is a lot of economic abuse and lives are very intertwined. There are kids involved. The idea of leaving, being in a shelter, going to family who you haven't spoken to or seen in a while, I can get it. As much as there is a lot of hurt in my heart for my mum, the only hope I have that she can get out before it's too late. That maybe the abuse isn't as bad as anymore, that maybe it's not happening, because even without her in my life, I still want her to actually just live her own life. I think it can seem like for a lot of people in abusive situations that there's no way out, that there's no way to start again, it's too late, you're in too deep, and I don't know what it looks like because everyone else's situation is so difficult. And like I said, I don't know if I would have faced up to my demons if I didn't have my accident, if I didn't have to spend as much time bedbound and in my head as I did. But the overall feeling is that everybody deserves to live their life without abuse. Like I have mentioned, all resources will be linked down below in the description. Thank you again for watching another episode of the Cripple Chronicles podcast. I hope you have kind of found this little series informative, and I know that within it there are things that I have probably forgotten to cover, and a bit like my little representation mini series that I did like last year, there will probably be videos that end up getting videos that end up getting added to this series a long time. The more I find things to kind of speak about. And yeah, if there is anything that you would like to reach out to me about, you can send me an email to cripplecroniclespod@gmail.com. You can follow me on all socials at cripplecroniclespod. Like I said earlier on, the next few episodes are going to be some maybe light-hearted Reddit content, some TikTok things that I have been thinking about, making my own compilations, because my brain is so forgetful that I think if I like scroll through, put loads of things in, by the time it comes to recording it, I'll have forgot what I've put in, and it'll be a more genuine reaction. I've been yapping for too long without any liquid that my voice is starting to go. But yes, if there is any topics that you would like to hear me cover, please leave a comment, drop me an email. Remember to subscribe. If you like this episode, I am posting weekly on Monday mornings. You can turn on the notification bell so you won't miss an episode. And like I said, I hope you have enjoyed this content. Most of the websites and resources that I got information from will be linked down below in the description box. Tell me what you have liked about this series in the comments. If you are an introvert and you just want to engage in the comments but not say anything, maybe leave me one of those little like healing heart emojis and like the heart hand emoji. And yeah, take care of yourselves. Be safe, whatever you're getting up to this week. Hug your loved ones, look out for yourself, and I will catch you next week. Bye!